Have you ever felt that pull, that desire for self-improvement, to really change things, unlock something inside?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people feel that. They're drawn to these charismatic figures who seem to have all the answers.
Exactly. But what happens when that search, that, drive for growth, just goes completely off the rails into really dangerous territory?
Yeah.
Today we're looking at a story that's, it's compelling but also deeply disturbing. It's about James Arthur Ray. He was a life coach, promised transformation, but it ended in tragedy.
A really devastating tragedy.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack what happened, look at how Ray gained so much influence, and explore some tough questions about trust, vulnerability, and frankly, the extremes of the self-help world.
It's a stark example, isn't it? It shows that delicate balance between how powerful belief systems can be, but also how perilous if they're not, kept in check.
Right. So let's start with the man himself. James Arthur Ray. He was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, back in 1957. His dad was in the Navy originally, then became a Pentecostal preacher. His mom worked from home.
So a religious background then.
Seems like it. Apparently, young James seemed quite spiritual. People said he enjoyed his father's sermons, could even recall them. But there was this kind of contradiction early on. Well, despite the family's strong faith and, hard work, they were always poor, always struggling. And as he got older, James apparently started questioning things, questioning God. Why were they struggling so much? Why rent, not own?
That makes sense. A child seeing that disconnect between faith and reality.
Yeah, and on top of the money struggles, he had a tough time personally as a kid. He was apparently physically weak, had thick glasses, buck teeth. He got bullied quite a bit.
Ah, okay. So dealing with a lot.
Definitely. And those experiences, the poverty, the bullying, they seem to have really shaped him, made him constantly wonder, when is my life going to get better?
And you often see that, don't you? Those early feelings of vulnerability, like being powerless or not good enough, they can fuel this really intense drive later on.
Yeah.
A drive for control or for finding the answer, some kind of mastery.
That feels spot on. Do you think even back then as a kid, he was kind of already heading down a path where transformation was going to be his big thing, maybe to, fight back against those feelings?
It's hard to know for sure, but the seeds were likely planted. And we see it pretty clearly after high school, around 1976. He got really focused on self-development.
How so?
Well, initially he was physical. He started working out seriously, even bought a motorcycle, tried to project a different image, maybe.
Interesting. And then something major happened, right? The accident.
Yeah, motorcycle accident. Landed in the hospital. And given his religious upbringing, he apparently interpreted this whole thing as like a sign.
It's a sign.
He started believing that focusing on the external, looking good, being cool, those were, in his words, sins or desires holding him back from true inner development.
Wow. So a big shift in thinking.
A huge shift. He decided external things couldn't fix him. He had to change his mindset, his heart, he said, to become a better man.
Okay, but that kind of thinking, when growth becomes about punishing yourself for perceived weaknesses almost, doesn't that open the door to some pretty extreme methods down the line?
That's exactly the danger.
Yeah.
It can create this sense that you need to push through everything, maybe even develop a dangerous sense of invincibility, like you can overcome natural limits through sheer will. It definitely makes you wonder, for anyone listening, when does that drive to overcome weakness cross a line?
A really important question. And that potential danger, it seems like it started to show up in his career path too. After getting a 2-year degree and a short marriage, he ended up at AT&T when he was about 26.
Okay. Doing what?
Started in telephone marketing, then moved up to sales manager. He was there for over 10 years. And this seems crucial. It's where he really honed his skills in persuasion, teaching his team how to influence people.
The sales background, that's often key in this field.
And it's during his time at AT&T that he makes this, pretty bold claim. He said he worked closely with Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits guy, for 4 years. Even said he used Covey's stuff in his training.
Right. I remember hearing about that. But wasn't that disputed?
Heavily. Covey's associates later came out and said they had absolutely no idea who James Ray was. Never heard of him.
Wow. Okay, so that already suggests someone willing to, let's say, embellish the truth to build credibility.
Seems that way. And those strong sales skills, that ability to persuade and build belief. It's easy to see how that translates into the self-help world, right? Where selling the idea, the promise, is everything.
Absolutely. Conviction becomes currency. And if you can sell yourself, maybe even a fabricated history, that's incredibly powerful in that space.
Yeah, and that power, that persuasive skill, it definitely fueled his next move. He didn't want to be an employee anymore. He wanted to be his own boss, make real money, so he left AT&T.
And started his own business.
Yep. Founded Quantum Consulting Group. Later, that became James Ray International. And it got big. By 2009, it was reportedly pulling in something like $9.4 million a year.
That's serious money.
It is. But interestingly, even with that success, there was a period, roughly 1996 to 2006, where he apparently hit some financial bumps.
Oh.
Yeah, and that seems to have pushed him more towards these spiritual enlightenment projects. He started inviting others to invest with him in these ventures.
Okay, shifting focus.
And then in May 2005, he did this big trip, 10 days on Mount Sinai in Egypt. He was looking for Moses' cave, believed it was this place of profound spiritual power.
Right.
He claimed that after that trip, his spiritual development just went to a whole new level.
Okay.
And when he got back, he started mixing this stuff, quantum physics, or his take on it anyway, with his own beliefs, create this kind of unique new wisdom.
And that caught people's attention.
Big time. It led directly to him being featured in The Secret. You know, the Law of Attraction documentary and book, that was huge.
Oh yeah, everyone was talking about that.
Being in The Secret and then appearing on Oprah afterwards, that just massively boosted his fame, his confidence. It seemed to totally validate his whole approach.
The Oprah effect. It's powerful.
Totally. And as his fame grew, so did the price tags on his seminars. And the promises got bigger, transcending limitations, achieving anything.
And the methods got more extreme.
That's what witnesses said. It moved from talks to stuff that sounds, well, pretty dangerous. Walking on broken glass, firewalking, bending steel bars with your neck, smashing concrete blocks with your hands.
Whoa.
He was telling people they had way more power than they realized, pushing them to prove it.
Psychologically, that's a really potent setup. You've got the group dynamic, the charismatic leader, your own deep desire to change.
Sure.
People get pushed to prove they're committed, to have that breakthrough.
Right.
And that pressure, emotional and social, it can absolutely override your basic survival instincts, leading to real physical risks.
And real physical harm did happen. There was at least one documented case before the main tragedy. A woman broke her wrist trying to do a karate chop on wood like he told her to. Her hand just fractured.
Ouch. That's a serious red flag right there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he even had this whole system, this hierarchy for his followers, the spiritual warrior pyramid.
Right.
The top level spiritual warrior was supposed to bring ultimate freedom, total success. But you had to go through his most intense, most extreme courses to get there. He basically said, reach this level and you're set. Anything you want, you'll succeed.
Wow. High stake.
Very high. Which brings us to October 2009, the Fatal Spiritual Warrior Retreat. He just dropped $4 million on a big house in Beverly Hills as like a seminar HQ.
Right.
This camp was held out near Sedona, Arizona at a ranch. 50 people. And get this, it cost $9,620 per person for 5 days.
Nearly $10,000.
Yeah. And they signed waivers, sure, mentioning physical and mental tests, but critically, those waivers were vague. They didn't spell out the extreme level of risk involved. People didn't think they were signing up for something life-threatening. They thought this was their path to becoming limitless.
They were trusting him completely.
Completely. And the conditions at the camp itself were intense right from the start. First, everyone had to shave their heads. Ray said it was about detaching from vanity, from physical attachments.
Yeah.
Then, a 36-hour fast, grueling, and for sleeping. Sleeping bags, outdoors in the desert, huge temperature swings, baking hot days, freezing nights. He called it tough love to help them transform.
That sounds brutal even before the main event.
Exactly. And the main event, the ultimate test, was this sweat lodge ritual. It wasn't an ancient structure. It was something they'd just built. Small, circular, maybe 24 feet across, but only 4 feet high.
4 feet high, so crawling room, basically.
Pretty much. And only one entrance flap, no other ventilation at all. Ray presented it as being like a Native American endurance tradition, positioning himself as the wise elder guiding them.
Which is deeply problematic in itself. Using sacred traditions completely out of context, without any real understanding or respect. Authentic lodges have strict safety protocols, spiritual guidance from experienced elders. This sounds like a dangerous distortion.
Absolutely, and it was dangerous. You had 50 people crammed into this tiny, unventilated space. The heat built up incredibly fast, and the oxygen levels must have plummeted.
50 people in that small space. Unbelievable.
And while they were inside suffering, Ray was outside, and the things he was saying, just incredibly dangerous, encouraging them with lines like, true spiritual warriors can overcome death. You just have to let go and tell yourself, if I die, it's okay.
Oh my God.
He framed it as a metaphor, spiritual rebirth. But inside that hut, it was becoming terrifyingly literal.
That's chilling.
So, October 8th, 2009. They heat hot rocks, place them in the center, pour water over them, steam everywhere. Intense, suffocating heat. Estimates put the temperature inside somewhere between 150 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's incredibly hot. 65 to 93 Celsius. Just unbearable, especially with no ventilation.
Unbearable is right. After about an hour, people started showing really alarming signs of heat stroke. Breathing problems, dizziness, fainting, collapsing.
Classic heat stroke symptoms, the body is shutting down.
But Ray, still outside, was pushing them to stay, saying quitting meant failure, meant they weren't committed. He kept talking, even as people were being dragged out semi-conscious. He was apparently praising the ones who stayed, saying things like, "Today is a good day to die."
That's just horrifying. Praising endurance in the face of obvious, life-threatening medical emergencies. Those symptoms you described, the breathing, dizziness, fainting, those aren't just discomfort. They are direct, critical signs of the body overheating dangerously. Organs start to fail. This wasn't a test of spirit. It was a full-blown medical crisis.
And for some, it was fatal. Kirby Brown collapsed inside. She had no pulse when they got her out. Died after being rushed to the hospital. James Shore also died shortly after. And Liz Newman, she hung on for 9 days in the hospital before she passed away.
3 people dead.
3 dead. And 18 others injured heat stroke, dehydration, breathing problems, a complete disaster.
Just devastating.
And what did Ray do immediately after? He vanished from the camp. Just disappeared before the police arrived.
He left.
Gone. But the staff who were there, they talked to the police. And their testimony was crucial. They said they'd warned Ray repeatedly, told him people were in bad shape, that he needed to stop.
And he refused.
He refused. And even worse, they said Ray specifically told them not to call 911. He insisted they try to handle it themselves, self-treat the people who were collapsing.
Telling them not to call for help. That moves it beyond just poor judgment, doesn't it? That sounds like a deliberate choice. Prioritizing the experience or his control over people's actual lives. A massive failure of any duty of care.
It really does. It took 4 months, but they finally arrested him in February 2010. His explanation: he wasn't fleeing, he was consulting to find solutions.
Right.
He was charged with manslaughter, 3 counts of negligent homicide. The trial started in May 2011. His defense basically argued it was a tragic accident, no intent to kill. They pointed out he'd done similar lodges before without deaths.
So negligence versus intent.
Exactly. The verdict came back. Guilty of negligent homicide for all 3 deaths. His sentence, just 2 years in prison.
2 years for 3 deaths.
Yeah. There was, understandably, a lot of public outcry. Victims' families were devastated by the sentence, though some of his supporters actually argued he shouldn't have faced criminal charges at all, maybe just civil suits.
A huge range of reactions then.
Definitely. He was released in July 2013. And what did he do? Went straight back into the self-development business.
Immediately.
Pretty much immediately. And investigations later showed that even those previous sweat lodge events, the ones the defense mentioned, they had resulted in hospitalizations before, just no deaths until Sedona.
So there was a pattern of dangerous outcomes even before the fatality.
Seems like it. And today, well, a lot of his followers left, obviously, but some gave him a second chance. Ray himself says he never meant any harm. He genuinely wanted to help people, learned his lesson in prison, and now has even deeper insights.
Deeper insights.
Yep. He's still out there doing motivational workshops, has a YouTube channel, still promoting his methods.
It forces you to think about the enormous responsibility that comes with influence, especially when people are vulnerable, looking for answers, for transformation. Ray's story is such a powerful and frankly chilling example of what can happen when charisma, ambition, and maybe a distorted sense of purpose go completely unchecked. The human cost of that kind of misplaced trust is just immense.
It really is. This whole story, digging into James Ray, it leaves you with so many questions, doesn't it? About self-improvement itself, why we're drawn to these powerful figures, and where the line is, the boundary of belief. It's just such a stark reminder that we need to be critical thinkers, use discernment when we engage with any teacher, any guru.
Absolutely crucial.
So, thinking about all this, what really stands out to you? How do we, when we're seeking to better ourselves, make sure we don't end up in situations that are harmful, even dangerous? It really underscores that true growth, it should empower you, right? Not put you in danger.
Empower, not in danger. Yeah. That's a perfect way to put it.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been quite a story to unpack.
It certainly has.
You can find more of our deep dives wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate you listening and hope you'll join us again next time.